Terms apply.
Jim Pfaff is the president of the Conservative Caucus, theconservativecaucus.org, theconservativecaucus.org, and he's joining us right now. Good morning, Jim.
Good morning. How you doing, Bobby?
Good. Tell me first, just a mission statement for the. I haven't said this in a while. I've had you on multiple times. Haven't given you a chance to talk about your mission statement in a while. So, what are you guys all about?
Well, so our mission is to advance conservative policy in this country by helping people learn at the local level, boots on the ground, to assert things in their local government, but also in the federal government. But also we're constitutionalists. We are out to help us get back to a constitutional republic in the way that we were founded by urging our elected officials to draw us back closer to that document, which is what made America great. And we believe in asserting a rational Judeo-Christian ethic and culture, as well as in politics, in whatever we do.
So that's the mission statement for the Conservative Caucus. So let's talk about some issues that are front and center here. Tariffs. One would think you're conservative. Oh, they would not be for tariffs. I realize America's been on the short end of the stick for years. We're always told that, and even Milton Friedman said, if somebody else does tariffs, the answer is not to do tariffs back. But honestly, it's gotten so one-sided that I'm for it. I don't know what your stance is on it, but I feel like if you break a few eggs to make a cake, I'm all for it. We'll see what happens. I'm willing to give it a try. What do you say?
Listen, I love Milton Friedman. I'm a huge Milton Friedman fan. I personally come from the libertarian Austrian economics side of the issue. But on this, I've really been concerned for decades now, actually, in working in politics, how people don't understand this tariffs issue. And I hate to go against Milton Friedman, a Nobel laureate and brilliant man. But this, someone does tariffs, don't do it back, it just seems irrational to me. In fact, that's been one of the biggest problems that we've had. What we are doing right now is resetting two major aspects of our historical agenda when it comes to international trade. First is the post-World War II effort that we undertook to keep our tariffs against other countries low while they kept theirs high, because we had so much money flowing through. We had so much economic activity, and we weren't nearly as harmed as other countries were physically during the war. We actually spent a whole lot of money, but we had a great economy rolling, so we wanted them to take advantage of it. The second bump in this problem was during the Clinton administration and globalization, which was touted as a free market open trade system internationally, but it did nothing to change this paradigm, and it really ended up helping major corporations, sometimes at the expense of small business. So both of those efforts were a real problem. And the last point to make is China has been a member of the WTO ever since we gave them most favored nation status, which I opposed, and the founder of our organization, Howard Phillips, opposed in the late 90s. They break the rules. They do not abide by WTO, and I hate these internationalist organizations anyway, but they don't even abide by those, even though they say they will. They steal our intellectual property and then utilize it to resell it back into our markets. So these things have to change, and I just appreciate the courage of Donald Trump to take this on. I do not believe in a massive tariff isolationist structure that's permanent, but I do believe in taking on this particular effort, which Donald Trump says he is taking on, to try to reset the agenda on international trade.
It's so funny you brought up the most favored trade status, most favored nation. When China was seeking that, Nancy Pelosi got up and recoiled against it and talked about how, and she already went over the tariffs and the numbers and everything else. And she was all for tariffs and not for most favored nation. And now, what happened, Nancy? What happened? Because she flip-flopped. Yeah. So there's a lot in play here, too. So I had a guy on from the Austrian School of Austrian Economics yesterday. He's with the think tank out with the Mises Institute, and Dr. Jonathan Newman, I think it was, Dr. Jonathan Yeah, Dr. Jonathan Newman yesterday, and he's not for tariffs, although he understood what was going on and said if it works, it'll be great. I just feel at some point it becomes so lopsided that I wonder what Milton Friedman would say if he were alive today, or would he be a total free trader? But this isn't free trade when we're the ones paying tariffs. And if tariffs are so bad, how come they're bad? They're bad for us. But now with China charging, look, Trump posted that list. And now China's saying they're going to post give us even more tariffs. But at the time, 67% tariff on anything from the United States coming into China. How come it's so bad when we do it, but apparently not when China does it or other countries? Why is that?
Well, that's one of the irrational aspects of this argument, because for exactly what you said. If high tariffs are bad for us, why is it bad for other countries? Now, that argument, though, to the point that you're making about what would Milton Friedman say, I think the closest thing that we would get that we have as an example of what Milton Friedman might say is what Thomas Sowell just recently said, which is he was just a bit disgusted by it, but he did say if what Donald Trump says he wants to do happens, then okay, maybe that's okay. I mean, he would be ambivalent to negative on it. I really believe that. Right. And I'm negative on, again, having a protectionist tariff structure that is permanently in place. I think we need low tariffs. I have been arguing the case for years that what we need is bilateral agreements with countries, get rid of all the internationalist organizations, bilateral agreements with countries, and we make good deals with countries that have free societies where the government is not oppressing them, and that we treat any other country that won't have a free society with a very jaundiced eye at best, and with shutting them out at worst. You know, Kevin O'Leary of Shark Tank just recently said, I think it was yesterday on CNN, he said he wanted 400% tariffs placed immediately on China. And his argument was, I do business in China, he said. They steal intellectual property. They repurpose what they build off that intellectual property and sell it into our markets. They never follow the rules. They always break the rules. And he said, Xi can only stay in power if his people can have jobs. So you slap the 400% tariff on. He asserted that Xi would be on a plane to D.C. the next day to try to make a deal. Now, I don't know the absolute accuracy of all that, but I do believe that if we're going to have a real free market system where people can trade globally, you have to play hardball, particularly with the United States' strength worldwide. We're 25% of the world economy, and so much about what happens with innovation or anything else happens here. While we have that, because we won't always be the leader necessarily, while we have that, we need to assert this to get things back on par so that we can have a rational economic activity around the world once more.
It's interesting that there can be a litmus test in the Biden administration if you weren't allowing abortion, if you weren't DEI in certain countries, if you weren't following all the rules that the Biden administration or Obama set out, then they would withhold foreign aid. If you were not doing abortions, allowing abortions, whatever.
Yeah.
No foreign. But you're now going to withhold, and you're going to do this because they won't trade equally with us. That's unfair. No. And if this can cripple China militarily, I'd rather fight a tariff war than a real war.
Well, listen, I believe in the prospect of having as much love and peace with other countries. I'm not someone that believes we just go to war or put a military stance to go get our will.
But do you hear what I just said?
Country.
I'd rather fight a tariff war than a military war. If this prevents a war, I mean, and I'm not for the if the tariffs may not work, but if they do, it solves so many problems. The ones you've been discussing, it cripples China militarily. They don't have our money. They stop stealing our intellectual properties.
Right.
It brings jobs back here. It makes us less dependent. Somebody just pointed out the pharmaceuticals are made in China. There's no quality control there, number one. And number two, if they wanted to and cut off all of our pharmaceuticals in spite, then we're up the creek. Another way we're up the creek. Not just militarily, not just because of chips, not just because of steel, but because of pharmaceuticals.
That's absolutely right. Those security concerns are valid, and they they must be, in limited circumstances, part of how we deal with international trade, and definitely as it deals with our posture with China. Listen, China is out on a long-term basis to dominate the world. That is what they want to do. It's a publicly stated stance. They do. In fact, you talk about racism in the United States. When it comes to the CCP, I don't know that it comes to all the Chinese people, and I have a lot of Chinese friends in Singapore and Taiwan, but I don't think the people are necessarily that way. But there has been a cultural looking down upon other cultures in Chinese history, and it is definitely being asserted from the Communist Party in China. They do want to dominate others. They want to be, and by the way, every one of us in a general sense is in a competitive stage. That's what this whole debate is all about, by the way. Also, we're all competing to try to be the country that does well economically. You can only do that, though, when the terms are fair and the same for both sides. And a reciprocal trade regime, bilateral arrangements with other countries is exactly where we've needed to go. And again, a side benefit is getting rid, or at least reducing the power and authority of these internationalist organizations, which don't have any country's interest in mind. They have their own interest in mind as well, too.
But how dare the United States have its interest in mind? That's one thing.
Right, exactly.
That's one thing Milton Friedman used to talk about. He talked about greed, and he said, "What is greed? We're all greedy." And he goes, "You act like the America's the only country." You remember that speech? And he talked about, you don't think that Russia's greedy, you don't think that China's greedy. They're all greedy, and so we don't have a right to look after what's best for us. And again, if this can get everybody, what Trump at least has done is upset the apple cart so much that they have to flip it back up and put the apples back on. And at this point, we say, okay, now here's how we're doing it, folks. We're doing it this way, or we're not doing it at all. He's really put us in charge. By doing this, he's put us in charge.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. And the way you mitigate greed, by the way, there's a quick a note on the greed thing, and that's from a Phil Donahue interview he did back in the late 70s. The greed thing can be mitigated through economics, because what do you have to do to be economically successful? If you're just the greediest person in the world and you want to become a billionaire, how do you do that? You create products that people want to buy. You treat your employees well enough so that they can produce those products or services or whatever in an efficient way, and you keep the cycle going back, where you go back to the customer and say, how can we do better? How can we do more? And you go to your employees and you keep building out things to help them be productive and capable and enjoy the position that they're in, so that you keep as many of those people as possible. And then at the end of the day, you're following the golden rule, and you still may be the greediest jerk in the world. That's the kind of principles that are really at play as we're talking about this debate. Donald Trump understands those principles very, very well. And this is a unique opportunity in American society and American history to really get back to the principles, the fundamental foundational principles that ever made us a great country. And it's because we treat people fairly and we honor hard work so that people can reap the largesse of the rewards of the good decisions that they make. That is a basically Christian principle, and Donald Trump is helping reassert that. And I think it's a positive situation that we're in right now. It's very scary. It's very frustrating in some ways. But to have positive change, you have to go through some trials as well. And Donald Trump has given us an opportunity to get this back right.
It's so funny. 2-3 weeks ago, when he was making all these executive orders and everything was happening. Now, by the way, courts have ruled on 3 or 4 big issues in his favor, in firing federal employees, on immigration, a few other on teaching, on one of the set of, I forget what was education rule, college money to colleges. The Supreme Court ruled all in his favor, but 2 or 3 weeks ago, oh my God, it's only 62 days, what damage he's done. Now he's been at the economy for only 62 days, and he's supposed to have solved it all, and he hasn't. The tariffs just got implemented, and people are screaming bloody murder. He just started it. We need to push back on this, this everything's got to be solved in 60-second mantra.
Well, and keep in mind, when you're looking at the stock market, these are investors and investment firms that are betting on the future. Okay, it does not predict necessarily accurately that things are going down. This is a human calculation that's being made, and there's objective data and criteria that they use. And I'm not saying it doesn't say anything, but the reality is that these are humans engaging in these trades in the markets. They're trying to see what the future will hold, and there's a combination of, did they predict it correctly? And they have to predict it correctly. But then the other thing is what actually happens, and that also will affect the markets moving forward. So what's actually happening right now is these tariffs are up, and that's a threat to, by the way, the Dow Jones is made up of companies that do business mostly around the world, not mostly in the United States. I think the number is like 64%. So that's a rational decision. That doesn't mean that everything's falling apart. It just means that those particular companies are at risk. American companies will not be at risk doing business here, and that part and hope of the future of our economy will factor in as well. And FYI, there's no major risk of recession right now. There's only a very mild risk of recession. So that's another thing to take into account here. This is not destructive, is the point I'm making. It's healthy destruction, if one wants to put it that way.
Right. All right, Jim Pfaff with the Conservative Caucus, theconservativecaucus.org, theconservativecaucus.org. Man, that went fast. Thank you so much, Jim. Have an awesome day, and talk to you soon.
Thanks, Bobby. Talk to you soon.
Yeah.